Hi everyone, it's Lori with Behavior Education at Spirit Keeper Animal Sanctuary. Welcome to Training Tuesday for January 31st, 2023. This week you're going to get to see a behavior that we work on quite often here at home with one of our snakes take place when we then take him to the vet. Now the footage at the veterinary hospital was filmed on November 22nd, 2022, and the footage of him training was actually just filmed this month on January 17th, 2023. So yes, the exercise was filmed after we did this behavior at the vet, but we do this exercise lots with Telemachus. And that is because sometimes Telemachus 100% shifts completely out of his enclosure onto a station with his entire body. And in fact, he's been in other videos where I've demonstrated him 100% shifting out and positioning on a scale to be weighed. But sometimes he doesn't. And I wanted to show you how we prepare for that eventuality when we need the snake to shift out, but they don't shift out all the way. And I anticipate that happening more often at the vet than not, because the veterinarian's office is someplace many of the snakes haven't been before, and they are likely to be more nervous and experiencing a higher level of stress at that location around strange people and after an hour and a half to 2 hour drive. And so just to prepare them for things like that, as well as to prepare them for the handling they will experience during a wellness check, I do exercises at home where I don't have them shift completely out of their enclosure. I have them partially shift out, and then I reinforce them, and then I practice touching them and moving them and handling them while they're eating and moving them to a station, etc. So you are going to get to see Telemachus practicing this behavior at home. It's a behavior we have practiced many times, and then you're going to get to see how that translates to being useful at our vet's office. I have things set up here for Telemachus to shift partially out of his enclosure. So from the beginning, I set up the environment so that he would not need to shift 100% out of his enclosure, because I wanted to practice him partially shifting out of his enclosure and then having me touch him and handle him and move him the rest of the way. So he's actually at the far right hand side of his enclosure. If you're looking at the video, you can barely see him in the very far right margin. This is a 5 foot long by 2 foot high by 2 foot deep enclosure, and he was way at the other end, and I'm asking him to come to the left side and shift partially out onto the station. So he's very good at this behavior. It's something we've been practicing always with him since he arrived, and he was hatched in 2016, so he's 6 years old. He's turning 7 this year. He's been doing this a long time. He doesn't need to shift all the way out in order to reach this station. If I wanted him to shift all the way out, I would have had to move the station further away, or I would have had to prepare to move the target more and have him figure eight around the legs of this station to get his whole body onto it. But I only wanted him to partially shift out and then take the reinforcement, which he does. And that's because I wanted to practice this behavior right here, specifically for when we go to the vet, touching him, handling him while he's partially on the station and eating, and then having him experience some movement of the station and some handling while he's eating on the station and movement in general. So how does this translate to our veterinary visit? Well, now here we are at the vet, and this is at a whole different angle. There was no one to help me film, and I didn't have a tripod. So I had my phone sitting vertically on the exam table, leaned up against something. And I'm asking Telemachus to shift out of his transport tub and onto the scale station. Now notice that I brought the scale station that I use at home with me to the vet, so it's something he's familiar and comfortable with, and we just put it on the vet's scale. So you can look at the far right margin of this video, and you can see his nose poking up over the shift, or over the shift tub, or over the transport tub. Now I initially showed him the target, and he followed it up to that point, and then he hesitated, and then I went ahead and showed him the reinforcement, but I moved it further towards the scale station. And so what I'm using here is a combination of targeting behavior and luring behavior. So I targeted him from the bottom of the shift or the transport tub to that top right corner. Then I showed him the reinforcement, but moved it far enough away that he would have to come closer to the scale station. And he gets almost to the scale station, but now at this point, there's a technician, or maybe it's even the doctor at this point, moving around to our right. And so he's a little bit nervous about that. And he decides that he's going to back up. So at that point, I go ahead and give him the reinforcement because he's done quite a bit. He's come all the way off the bottom of the transport tub, all the way up and over the top and towards the scale. So at this point, I just use that behavior that we have trained over and over at home. He's got the reinforcer. He's partially out of the shift. I just pick him up and I move him onto the scale station, which again is a familiar scale station to him because it's ours from home. I brought it with me and we just set it on the vet's scale. My veterinarian is a fear-free certified practice, so they give me the time and have the patience to allow me to do this training in the office and to work with me during the exam to make it as stress-free as possible for the snake. So after we weigh him, she's able to then listen to his heart, not only with the stethoscope, but then hook up her Doppler machine and listen to his heart with the Doppler. So he happily ate while he got his wellness exam, his physical exam, his heart was listened to, and we got one of the swabs for his nidovirus test, and that was the cloacal swab. We did the choanal swab, the one in his mouth, after he was finished eating. And so that all went very smoothly. Now you're seeing us back at home, just practicing shifting back into his enclosure, which you've seen many times on videos. And how is that relevant to us and our vet visit? Well, because we practice shifting in and out of his habitat, and we practice that in different ways at home. He's fairly used to doing this, and so I was able to shift him back into his shift container at the vet. I always bring several very small reinforcement items. I brought the quail, which was a big item, which I knew would take him a long time to eat, so that he could eat that during his exam. And then I brought some smaller items so that I was able to ask him to go back into his shift. He started to come out. I targeted him back down off of the blinds and back into his shift. So he got one very small item for initially going back into his shift, and then he got another very small item for targeting off the blinds and going back into his shift. I just didn't have anyone to video that for me.